So, we're getting to the very end of this, right? The conversation is pretty much over. It was brief, but heated. The points were very clearly made, and the insinuation of what's behind them is very clear. There are some 2 points on the last paragraph where he talks about his son. Concerning his son, Bordas is described at the beginning of the story as the younger son of Beregond, and he was thus the brother of Bergil, son of Beregond, who was Pippin's companion in Minas Tirith. So that's where the reference is, the connection. In the first version, Borlas gave the name Bergil to his own son. But then he decided to go with Berelach. At this point, I guess another manuscript comes to an end at the foot of a page. B has here, he had not been in good health since the spring. Old age was gaining upon him. From here onwards, as noted earlier, he's following text B, changing the name Arthael to Ceylon. I guess Ceylon also had the name Arthael at some point. He was debating, I guess, between two names for this character. The passage written on an envelope postmarked January 8th, 1968. So this is very close to the end of his life. Referred to on page 409 and 10. Would follow from this point in C. It reads, the last phrases are very difficult to make out. For he lived now with only 2 old servants, retired from the prince's guard, in which he himself had once held office. Long ago his daughter had married and now lived in distant parts of the realm, and then 10 years ago his wife had died. Gee, seems like very much like Tolkien's life, right? Time had softened his grief, while Berelach, his son, was still near home. He was his youngest child and only son, and was in the king's ships. For several years he had been stationed at the Harlond within easy reach by water, and spent much time with his father, but it was 3 years now since he had been given a high command, and was often long at sea, and when on land duty still held him at Pelargir far away. His visits had been few and brief. Ceylon, who formerly came only when Berelach was with Borlas, but had been most attentive when he was in Emin Arnen, always in to talk or bring news. So a little more background than we're given in this final form that they decided to print, which I think is always helpful. I mean, with Tolkien you can always get more, not less, you know? So Borlas speaks to himself. Yes, that was it. I spoke to Ceylon of Pelargir, quoting Berelach. There has been some small disquiet down at the Ethir. A few shipmen have disappeared, and also a small vessel of the fleet. Nothing much, according to Berelach. Peace makes things slack, he said, I remember, in the voice of an under-officer. Well, they went off on some ploy of their own, I suppose. Friends in one of the western havens, perhaps. Without leave and without a pilot, and they were drowned. It serves them right. We get too few real sailors these days. Fish are more profitable. But at least all know that the west coasts are not safe for the unskilled. That was all. So this was a quote of his son Berelach talking about things that are happening afoot, right? Somebody stole one of the king's ships, but ended up crashing it because they were idiots. And I suppose this was meant to set up for what would have been the, you know, this bigger ploy, this bigger scheme, this plot that needed to be unfoiled if this story had gone on. That was all, but I spoke of it to Ceylon and asked if he had heard anything of it away south. Yes, he said, I did. Few were satisfied with the official view. The men were not unskilled, they were sons of fishermen, and there have been no storms off the coasts for a long time. This was, I guess, Ceylon's response to Borlas asking if he had heard about this ship. As he heard Ceylon say this, suddenly Borlas had remembered the other rumors. The rumors that Othrondir had spoken of. Who is Othrondir? There's a note on him. It's just, there was an alternate of his name, Othrondor. So this is another character, I guess, had spoken of. It was he who had used the word canker. And then, half to himself, Borlas had spoken aloud about the dark tree. He uncovered his eyes and fondled the shapely trunk of the tree that he had leaned on, looking up at its shadowy leaves against the clear, fading sky. A star glinted through the branches. Softly he spoke again, as if to the tree. Well, what is to be done now? Clearly Ceylon is in it, but is it clear? There was the sound of mockery in his words, and scorn of the ordered life of men. He would not answer a straight question. The black cloves, and yet, why invite me to go with him? Not to convert old Borlas. Useless. Useless to try. No one would hope to win over a man who remembered the evil of old, however far off. Useless if one succeeded. Old Borlas is of no use any longer as a tool for any hand. Ceylon might be trying to play the spy, seeking to find out what lies behind the whispers. Black might be a disguise or an aid to stealth by night. But again, what could I do to help on any secret or dangerous errand? I should be better out of the way. So he's reasoning, going over this discussion and trying to understand the motivations behind Ceylon, and coming to the same conclusion that we already have, which is there's no other way. You're going to get killed. Right? Even in the case of Borlas specifically, even if he joined this cult, they have no use for him. They only want to use him to get information, and once they get that information, obviously they're going to kill him and remove him. And the fact that someone so close to him would be willing to do that clearly comes as a shock. Not just to Borlas, but I think to Tolkien himself, right? This is what the new generation thinks of us. This generation that was coming up, that we've raised and nurtured into life and given the keys of civilization over to, they just want us to die and be out of their way so they can do what they want to do. With that, a cold thought touched Borlas's heart. Put out of the way? Was that it? He was to be lured to some place where he could disappear, like the shipmen? The invitation to go with Ceylon had been given only after he had been startled into revealing that he knew of the whispers, had even heard the name, and he had declared his hostility. Right? This thought decided Borlas, and he knew that he was resolved now to stand robed in black at the gate in the first dark of night. He was challenged, and he would accept. He smote his palm against the tree. I am not a dotard yet, Neldor, he said, but death is not so far off that I shall lose my many good years if I lose the throw. So even at this stage, at this point in his life, he's willing to fight, you know? Even though he's going to lose, he's an old man, he's got no one to back him up, but he'll be damned if he's going to just give in to this and let them kill him, use him and kill him and throw him off. No, he's going to fight up, stand up against, he's going to stand up to them, he's going to face them. Wow, that's amazing, right? He straightened his back and lifted his head and walked away up the path, slowly but steadily. And here we're getting to the phrase that sells all of this story. The thought crossed his mind even as he stepped over the threshold. Perhaps I have been preserved so long for this purpose, right? Perhaps I have lived to this moment. It's kind of like what the Son of Man says, right? You spared me, Lord, you spared me for this moment, right? There's a translation of when he says, has thou forsaken me, when he's on the cross. And there's a translation that says that really what he said was, you spared me for this moment. And this is what he's saying, you spared me for this moment. Perhaps I have been preserved so long for this purpose that one should still live, hale in mind, who remembers what went before the great peace. Right? Even if I serve only as a reminder to the next generation that this happened. We fought a war against this. Scent has a long memory. Scent has a long memory. I think I could still smell the old evil and know it for what it is. I think I could still smell the old evil and know it for what it is. When I'm face to face with it, when I can smell it, I'm going to know what it is for what it is. I'm going to know if it's real or not. I'm going to know what I'm facing. If this is just some stupid antic, or if this is something more devious afoot. The door under the porch was open, but the house behind was darkling. There seemed none of the accustomed sounds of evening, only a soft silence, a dead silence. He entered, wondering a little. He called, but there was no answer. He halted in the narrow passage. I mean, this is so visually stunning, right? He halted in the narrow passage that ran through the house. And it seemed you could see him in that narrow passage. And it seemed that he was wrapped in a blackness. Not a glimmer of twilight of the world outside remained there. Suddenly he smelt it, or so it seemed, though it came as it were from within, outwards to the sense. Right? This isn't a literal smelling. This is something that you smell from inside of you. You can already sense it. You can feel it. It's as tangible as smelling it, but it's not necessarily physical. Suddenly he smelt it, or so it seemed, though it came as it were from within, outwards to the sense. He smelt the old evil and knew it for what it was. And that's the end. I mean, you could feel the emotion, right? I mean, it makes you wanna cry to see that old man reach this point in his life when he should be worrying about his grandchildren and having peace in his life, and he has to worry about fighting again because there's something that's trying to endanger the livelihood of the future, really, because at that point, what does he care if it's about himself? This is where the story ends, and it will never be known what Borlas found in his dark and silent house. We can guess. And we can guess that it was probably Ceylon or something alike to, something like that. He probably was already waiting for him the whole time, never really left. Nor what part Ceylon was playing, yes we do know, and what his intentions were, yes we do know. There would be no tales worth the telling in the days of the king's peace, my father said, and he disparaged the story that he had begun. I could have written a thriller about the plot and its discovery and overthrow, but it would be just that, not worth doing. I disagree. It would be nonetheless have been a very remarkable thriller, and one may well view its early abandonment with regret, but it may be that his reason for abandoning it was not only this, or perhaps rather that in saying this he was expressing a deeper conviction that the vast structure of story in many forms that he had raised came to its true end in the downfall of Sauron. As he wrote in Morgoth's Ring, Sauron was a problem that men had to deal with finally, the first of the many concentrations of evil into definite power points that they would have to combat, as it was also the last of those in mythological, personalized, but non-human form. Indeed. And now we are ready to fight the new fight, because we smell the evil and know it for what it is.